Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome back to the Conflict of Nick channel. I'm your host Nick, as always, and today you are probably going to notice something very different right off the bat. I did get a new microphone. I finally did replace my one that broke, and it's mainly thanks to the help of some very generous and amazing people in my community and in my YouTube channel that were willing to donate, and now I'm able to start making videos again. I'm able to sound better, and now we are able to finally continue and approach the finish of this basic series of Conflict of Nations, where we attempt to explain to the best of our ability every unit in the game. Now, why don't we jump right into it? I'm in my France game here, and really I have not made much progress because probably known to many, the servers have been really bad these last couple weeks, and so I really have not been able to make much progress in this game at all, so I really haven't bothered. But really, I am just using this game as a means to record and access the units panel. So we're going to head into the research tab, and we're going to head the 8th down, and we're going to be also explaining the missiles, which is just to the right of submarines. So why don't we get started with the first unit in the game. The first unit we're going to be explaining today is going to be none other than the attack submarine. The attack submarine is one of, in my opinion, I think the best naval units in the game, apart from ships like the cruisers, destroyers, and frigates. This attack submarine is, I think, one of the best ones in the whole naval panel of units. So, we are playing the European doctrine. Submarines have no best doctrine, neither do missiles, so there will be no doctrine info needed in this video. The level 1 attack submarine will require a level 3 naval base and arms industry level 1 to build. As you can see, they are very cheap. Actually, they're very cheap with components, but they require a little bit of rare materials, which most units do not, and they require a lot of electronics, 1,250 electronics. So these are going to be electronics heavy, somewhat components heavy, and rare materials heavy, because each tech level, as I've shown you guys throughout these videos, each tech level, there's 3 tech levels of every unit, and each time you go up a tech level, it's going to cost more rare to build one of these until it gets up to 750, which is going to eat up your rare if you don't have a very solid production. So you're going to want to manage that correctly. So what do we have here? Well, first off, the only thing that the level 1 submarine, well, any submarine for that matter, can attack is going to be naval vessels and enemy submarines. The level 1 is doing 8 damage to surface vessels, 5 damage to submarines, and something interesting is that, again, this attack range is only 50, and the radar range is 75. Something interesting that I was about to mention is that there are water buffs that you need to be very mindful of when using submarines. In high seas, like we discussed, ships move slower, and of course the Corvette gets lower HP in high seas. In high seas, the submarine is going to excel greatly. It gets 25% attack bonus in high seas and open waters, and it's going to have a negative 25% defense and attack in coastal waters, and it's going to have its HP reduced by half. So it is going to suffer as much as the Corvette, and it's going to suffer more by having that damage reduction, and it's going to be very, very bad for the submarine players if you're in coastal waters. So you really want to avoid that. And before I get into the tab to explain the rest of the perks that submarines get, there is an easy tab that you can go into on this right hand panel here. If you go to the show settings button, you will see from the top, you will be able to see a little picture of mountains, and it's going to be named toggle terrain types. If you click on that, you'll see all the different types of terrain. You'll see forests in the dark green here. You'll see open fields in the light green, etc., etc. You'll see suburbs, all that good stuff. So something many people don't know, though, is that there are different types of water. As you can see near my coast, you can see there is a lighter shade of water here, which is the coastal water. And you can see the darker one, which obviously is going to be high seas. So if a submarine is here on this route, on this path is going to be shallow water, which will mean it gets less attack and less health. And here it will have double its HP and have attack bonuses, which is going to be very good for it, and is going to be very necessary for submarines in the long run. So you're going to want to be mindful of that when you're playing the submarines, because it's very important to know what terrain is best for it. Now going on to the buffs and the bonuses that submarines get. So submarines get a sonar range, obviously. They get a sonar signature. They can't be detected by very many vessels at all. They're also a stealth unit. They cannot be seen unless they're in the view range of a stealth-revealing aircraft or ship. That means they cannot be spotted on radar right away, and they cannot be seen by non-stealth revealing ships or aircraft. They have an attack range of 50, as I said, and that goes up 25 each level, so 75 then 100. It has a radar detection of low, which means it can detect other submarines and ships of all kinds. Again, sonar range of 75. Reveal stealth of submarines. That's very important because submarines need to be able to detect each other. And it can launch a cruise missile at level 1, which is very nice because the cruise missile is a very deadly weapon, as I mentioned, against naval vessels in naval combat. Now going to the max level, we are looking at a very deadly vessel here. We're going to be doing 15 damage to ships and 12 to submarines, and in deep water with the buffs, 2 ships, a 5-stack of submarines can do over 90 damage to ships, which is absolutely insane. It's very amazing. This thing is going to be costing 950 components, 750 rare, as I mentioned before, and 1750 electronics. It is going to have a range of 100. It is going to have most of the same buffs, and really the only thing that's going to be changed besides that is the cruise missile load, which is going to increase to 2. Overall, this is one of my favorite units to use in the game, and personally I love to use it along with cruisers and frigates, because the frigates are able to cover the cruisers and the submarines very good, and the cruisers are able to have their own AA range as well and bombard enemy cities, which is the most important thing I think cruisers can do, is they can bombard ground targets very heavily, while the submarines and cruisers can also do heavy damage to ships, and the submarines fill in for the ASW warfare part of the naval engagement. So overall, one of the best naval units in the game in my opinion. Many don't use it, and many will get wrecked by these when they don't know how to fight them. So these are a great unit in my opinion. Next, we're going to be moving to the next submarine. It is going to be the Ballistic Missile Submarine. Now, this is something you're not going to see very often in the game. You are probably not going to see these used by many players, only players who like to be a little bit chaotic. Now, you're going to see these mostly in apocalypse games, I would say, because there are nukes there, but really, these are not something you'll see very often. So, this is going to be very building heavy. You're going to need a naval base level 4 to build these, a secret weapons lab, and an arms industry level 1. It's going to require 750 components, 350 rare materials, and 1,500 electronics. Very resources heavy and a huge investment just with the buildings alone. This is not going to be something you want to fight ships with, so I will keep this damage very brief. You do not want to fight ships with these. These are simply platforms to launch ballistic missiles and cruise missiles at your enemies, but mainly ballistic missiles, especially at level 1 when that's all you can launch. You can only launch 2 ballistic missiles at level 1. You have, notably, a higher range of detection with these missile submarines of 100, and the range is still only 50 though for level 1. You're doing a lackluster 4 against ships and 4 against subs, and you're getting a negative 50% attack and defense in coastal waters. No buffs in high seas, but your HP is going to be 30, and that's a little bit higher than the attack submarine. At max level, the attack submarine is getting 40 in high seas, 20 in shallow water, and at max level, the ballistic missile submarine is getting 50 in high seas and 25 in shallow water. So at max level, this thing is going to require 1,000 components, 950 rare, 1,750 electronics, and really what is going to change is going to be not just the damage a little bit, but the missile payload. One ballistic missile submarine can launch 5 ballistic missiles and 2 cruise missiles. That is what these things are for. These are launch platforms to launch a large amount of missiles on your enemies. It's going to have 100 range, but again, these things are not to be fighting. You're going to want to have these behind your fleets and ready to launch missiles at a moment's notice. You could hit land targets with these. You can launch many missiles. And like I said, just one of these can cause massive destruction if you launch the missiles properly. You don't want to willy-nilly launch them everywhere and just lose them all. You want to hit strategic targets with these. And it's going to require a lot of investment to use these, because the only reason these are useful is if you go into the missiles tab, and that's what we're going to be explaining next. Overall, these aren't super useful, but they actually can be if you are going for a missile game, a missile setup, and you want to have an offensive launch platform, especially in the water when you want to be close to your enemies in stealth. So overall, not a bad unit, but the attack submarine is definitely the highlight of the submarines tab, as there are only 2 subs, and the attack submarine, in my opinion, just fills much more of a unique and useful role compared to the ballistic missile submarine. Next, we're going to be going into the most unique unit tab in the game so far that we have explained, besides officers, which will come next. It is going to be the missiles. Now, there is going to be 3 easy things to explain here, and I will explain them as clearly as possible. So, if you are in your game, you will see there is the resources tab up here, there is gold, there is deployable gear, which is for seasoned units, and you will see these 3 warhead types. There is explanations for each. The conventional warhead is a warhead containing high explosives generally used against military targets and buildings. This is a quote from the game. Does not cause contamination, and I'll explain what that is in a minute. Warhead for a chemical warhead containing highly toxic chemicals released over a wide area, most effective against soft targets, will cause contamination. Nuclear warheads containing a nuclear device releasing immense amounts of explosive energy and radioactivity will cause contamination. So, basically, I'm going to try and explain these as quickly and as efficiently as possible. The guided missile program, or the conventional warhead, is going to be the warhead you use to kill enemy units purely. This is going to be a great warhead to use against armored targets. It's going to be great against naval vessels, and it's going to be decent against destroying buildings, but really it's for destroying units and turning the tides in combat. The chemical weapons program is going to be what is mainly a counter against soft targets, aka infantry units. This is going to do massive damage to infantry units, and it is also going to cause massive damage to the population of cities. For example, well, there's no stats in here for that yet because it's not a missile, but this will cause huge amounts of damage to the civilians and the population in the city, which will demolish its morale and its resource production of the city. The nuclear weapons program is great against everything. The nuclear weapons program will just obliterate ships, soft targets, hard targets, planes on the ground, civilians, buildings, everything. This is going to demolish anything it hits in a city, and this will cause contamination. It does have a splash damage. Something you want to take note of, we will explain in a minute, is there is a splash damage, and some of it can actually hurt your allies, so we will go over that. The first missile, though the biggest missile in the game, is going to be the ICBM, or the Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. This is going to be a missile that can only be launched via the Scud launcher from land. It cannot be launched by any other platform other than the Scud launcher, and it will require an insane amount of buildings to build one of these. So, To build an ICBM, all you will require will be nuclear warheads. The ICBM only comes in the nuclear variety. Level 1 ICBM will have, it can only target province centers and cities, which means you can't target, let's go to the map here. You cannot target this part of the road. You can only target the center of the province here. So that can hold it back a little bit. The nuclear level 1 ICBM deals splash damage of units within a radius of 50. And to put that into perspective, my mobile artillery here has a range of 50. So that splash damage is actually really huge. And any unit inside this circle will be affected by that nuclear ICBM. So it's very dangerous. And this thing damages friendly units. This can cause massive friendly fire if used in the wrong way, and you can cause massive casualties and even kill entire armies of your own coalition and yourself if you do not use these, smartly. This is a weapon that you need to use with caution, because it can not only hurt the enemy but can also hurt you. Level 1, it is doing 400 damage to soft infantry targets. This can wipe out an entire army. It can do 400 to tanks. Now when it says aircraft damage, this means aircraft that are on the ground. So 250 damage to grounded jets and helicopters. It can do 400 to surface vessels. Surface vessels will die if they're in the splash radius of this, and it does 50 building damage and 160 population damage. This will basically wipe out the population of the city. It has a massive speed value of 35. This is the fastest thing in the game. Hit points of 22, which is really low. One level 1 theater defense can counter this, and it is very weak against that. So max level, we get some upgrades, and we see it gets worse. The splash damage radius now becomes 75, which is even bigger. It does 475 damage to hard, soft, and ships, 320 to aircraft on the ground, 90 damage to buildings, and 220 to population. This is a single-use unit, as displayed by this icon here. When you fire this missile, uncontrollable unit, when you fire the missile, you cannot undo this action. So make sure you use the missile wisely. It has an attack range of 20,000. That is insane, and it has a speed value of 40 and a hit points level of 40. So this thing can be shot down. It requires 5 nuclear warheads, and the level 1 nuclear ICBM, I forgot what value I was looking here, the attack range is 5,000. So basically this thing can travel worldwide once it's a high enough level. This thing can be countered by theater defenses. 2 theater defenses if you target Paris, for example, and there are 2 theater defense systems in the center of Paris, this thing can be shot down. I would not recommend these things for much of an offensive use. I mean, you can get them if you're maining missiles, but really, if a player is smart, they will have plenty of theater defense systems around their homeland or in their front armies. So really, you don't want to target somebody's homelands with this, but rather, I think it would also be great if you were able to target advancing enemy armies with this, because it can be very deadly if they don't have the sufficient air protection to deal with it. So the nuclear ICBM is something you won't see very often, and really is something I would not use because I personally don't like this type of missile. The last 2 missiles are the ones I like more. So this is going to be a huge investment. It's going to require a lot of rare materials, and to build each warhead, we're going to have to see what it takes. So, as we just described the ICBM, it takes nuclear warheads. To build a nuclear warhead, it takes a secret weapons lab level 4 and an arms industry level 1, and you need to research the nuclear weapons program. You are also going to need to build a level 5 secret weapons lab if you want to build the launcher to launch the ICBM. So take that into consideration, is that it is a heavy resource hitting investment, and it's going to be really expensive. The chemical warhead is going to require a secret weapons lab level 2, and arms industry level 1. It is not going to be that much expensive compared to the nuclear warhead, as the nuclear warhead is going to require a massive amount of resources, as you can see here. But it is still going to be pretty pricey. It's not cheap. Then we have the conventional warhead, in my opinion, and I think, in my opinion, this is the best warhead to go for. This is the one that's going to wipe out armies and be for conventional use. It costs supplies, rare, and some electronics to build, and so it's relatively cheap, and it only requires a level 1 secret weapons lab. So that's going to be what you need to think about when you are getting these warheads. I know I made that kind of confusing probably, but sometimes it can be difficult to explain. So now we're going to be diving right into the ballistic missile. The PGM-17 Thor is going to be the level 1 EU ballistic missile. As you can see these arrows indicated here, I will explain this really quickly. To research the ballistic missile, you have to research the guided missile program. This has to be researched to research anything else in this entire tech tree. To research chemical warheads, you have to research the conventional guided missile program. To research nukes, you have to research chemical warheads. To research ICBMs, you have to research nuclear weapons, etc., etc. To research the cruise missile, you have to research the ballistic missile. So, the ballistic missile is going to be the pathway to your more lethal cruise missile. But let's explain this first. So the ballistic missile is going to be a more launchable missile from various platforms. There is going to be a ballistic missile launcher, ballistic missile submarines, elite bombers in the Seasons tab, and also the ballistic missile launcher on land. So this thing, as a conventional missile, will deal a splash damage within a radius of 10. This thing will not hurt friendly units, and it can only target province centers. It's going to be doing 25 damage to soft targets. It's not meant for infantry. 80 damage to hard targets, 75 to aircraft on the ground, and 80 to surface vessels. It's going to do some population damage and damage to infrastructure, and it has a speed value of 25 and a hit point value of 15 and a launch range or attack radius of 1,000. It's going to require 2 conventional warheads, and we're then going to be going to level 1 chemical ballistic missile. The chemical ballistic missile is going to have a splash radius of 25 and will damage friendly units. It has 125 damage to soft targets, as this is the warhead you want to use against soft targets and infantry. It's going to not deal that much to armor, 20. It's going to deal 40 damage to aircraft on the ground and 20 to ships, 60 to population. It's mainly for population, and it will kill them off fast. Same speed, same hit point value, it will require 2 warheads. Then we have the nuclear level 1 ballistic missile. It will be doing 250 damage to hard and soft targets, 135 to fixed wing and aircraft on the ground, and 250 to ships. Splash radius of 25 and damages friendly units. Damages infrastructure and population. Speed value and hit points are the same and requires nuclear warheads amount of 2. Moving up to level 6, aka the max level, we're going to see it gets even deadlier. Using 3 conventional warheads, it will be doing 50 damage to soft targets, 150 to armor and aircraft on the ground, and 150 to ships. It's going to be doing infrastructural damage and decent population damage, and it's going to have a speed value of 35 and hit points of 23. It's going to have a 15 splash damage, and that's really all that changes. The attack range also becomes 1,750. The chemical ballistic missile is going to require 3 warheads, as will all warhead numbers of this level of ballistic missile. It's going to have a splash damage of 35, can target province centers and cities. It damages friendly units. 225 damage to soft targets, 40 damage to hard targets, 75 to aircraft on the ground, and 40 to ships. And the hit points and everything else remains the same. This thing can also storm the position, which means this thing will ignore the entrenchment bonuses of a unit when engaging, which means that this thing will ignore defense bonuses, or when you take less damage from an attack that an enemy has in a city or anywhere that is defending. so this will be very good to dig people out and kill their units where they stand. Then you have the nuclear ballistic missile, which will have the same splash radius, and it will do 375 to soft and hard targets, 180 to grounded aircraft, and 375 to ships, and do massive infrastructural and civilian population damage. The value of the speed and hit points will remain the same, and overall this is the most devastating ballistic missile that you will have, and if placed well with nuclear ballistic missile submarines, you will be able to inflict serious damage to a country entirely if you manage to land some missiles. So overall, the ballistic missile is way more usable in my opinion and way more flexible than the ICBM. It can be launched from more platforms than the ICBM because, as I said, the ICBM can only be launched from the Scud launcher. And overall, it's not that bad because you have to get it to get cruise missiles anyway. Now, we're going to delve right into, in my opinion, the best missile in the game that I always love to use. It is going to be the cruise missile. Now, the cruise missile will have 3 warhead types as well, and I will be able to explain them to you fast. Now, why do I love this missile so much? Because so many things can launch this from their platform. Fighters can launch this from their platform. Ships can launch this from their platform. Submarines. Everything can launch this from their platform. Now the cruise missile is going to be so launchable that it's just able to be so flexible for you and devastating for your enemies. So the level 1 conventional cruise missile is going to require 1 warhead. It is going to be used against armored vehicles and surface vessels. It is going to do 10 damage to aircraft on the ground and soft targets and 30 damage to hard targets and ships. Minuscule damage to infrastructure and population, and has a splash radius of 5. It is going to have a speed value of 8 and have a very low hit points value of 3. This is easy to shoot down and can be shot down by merely 2 mobile anti-aircrafts level 1. So you want to use these things very cautiously when you have very limited numbers of warheads. This thing also only has an attack range of 200 at level 1, so keep that in mind. You have to get close to your enemy to launch this missile, and it's going to be mainly for certain types of targets. The chemical cruise missile level 1 is going to have a splash damage of 10. It will damage friendly units. It will do 40 to grounded aircraft and soft targets, and 10 to armor and 15 to ships. So this is going to be for soft targets. It's going to do also decent population damage. Same hit point value and same speed. Then we're going to go into the nuclear cruise missile. We will have the same splash radius of 10 and friendly unit damage, 50 all around the board to all unit types, including population, and we're going to have the same values all around for this missile, including speed value and hit points value. Moving to the max level cruise missile, this is where the cruise missile becomes very deadly. The max level conventional cruise missile is going to require 2 warheads to fire and has the same splash damage radius of 5. It's going to have a speed value of 14, which makes it very fast, and has a hit point value of 15. Now, what makes this thing so deadly? This thing can do 20 damage to soft targets and grounded aircraft, 70 to armor, and 50 to ships. Now, what makes this thing so deadly to ships, surface vessels, is that not many ships actually have that much protection against missiles. Only frigates, and in a certain amount of frigates. So really, this thing can kill almost any ship apart from frigates, and that's why it's so deadly. And ships can just launch multiple cruise missiles per ship. And here you can see every launch platform that the cruise missile can be launched from. For example, air superiority fighter, corvette, cruiser, attack submarine, UAV, officers, stealth bombers, fighters, everything like that, naval patrol aircrafts. It can be launched by so much, and you can actually see the tab as well. And for the ballistic missile, it can be only launched by 4 platforms. So the cruise missile is just so flexible. It's crazy how much damage this can do, especially how much of an influence it can have in a naval battle. And this is my favorite type of missile to use, as well as my favorite missile type to use. My favorite warhead and favorite cruise missile type. Now we're going to be going into the chemical cruise missile. 2 warheads, splash radius of 20, damages friendly units, 80 damage to grounded aircraft and infantry, 20 to armor, and 25 to ships, as well as 50 to population. It's going to have a speed value of 14 and have hit points of 15. It's going to be the same value for every missile regardless of the warhead. The nuclear cruise missile is going to double what its original damage was in every bar from level 1. 100 damage around the board to all unit types, 90 to population, splash damage of 20 and damages friendly units, and has a speed value of 14 and hit points of 15. So overall, this is the most flexible missile in my opinion, and it will be the most important and most influential missile in my opinion on the battlefield for you and for your enemies to use. Now, the best things I would say to go for out of all the things we talked about today are going to be the attack submarine and the cruise missile. Now, the warhead I recommend going for is the guided missile program, or the conventional cruise missile, because it's meant for attacking enemy units, especially armor and ships, and it doesn't cause a morale drop. Chemical warheads and nuclear warheads cause contamination and obviously kill large amounts of population of cities or provinces, which means your morale will suffer if you don't prepare accordingly. That means an inexperienced player can have their entire homeland burning after they launch a few ICBMs, even though they might be well placed. So bear in mind, the conventional cruise missile will be the best simply because it does not affect your morale that much, and also is great against an enemy army or navy. The attack submarine is the most influential submarine of the submarines, and that is my closing statement for today. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you're enjoying the series, and again, I want to thank everybody who has helped me so far and stuck with me. You all are so awesome, and it makes me so happy to know that you all are enjoying the series and enjoying the channel, and I love that you all are so supportive, especially the people who were able to donate for my mic fund. I really appreciate that. I love you guys. You're awesome. Consider subscribing and liking if you like the video and if you like the channel. We have more videos as well. Dislike if you didn't like it. If you didn't like something, you can also comment about it. If you have a question, if you have something to say merely, if you have a request for future videos, you can talk about it to us in the comments below, and I will try to get to every single one as fast as I can. So guys, I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will catch you guys in the next video, which will be explaining officers. Have a beautiful day, guys.